Fiona Flamingo by Rachael Urrutia Chu, illustrated by Kate Jeffrey. On a beautiful sunny afternoon where life was simply the best, a little flamingo named Fiona hatched from an egg in a nest. Little Fiona grew up making lots of friends. They played flamingo games from day's start to day's end. As the time passed, the birds all became stronger. They also got pinker, and their feathers grew longer. They turned pinker and pinker with each feather they grew. They got bigger and bigger until some of them flew. Fiona remained featherless until it happened one night. She woke up with feathers, but they were all bright white. The other flamingos gasped and stared at her in shock. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. They wildly began to squawk. Her friends looked at the white feathers, not knowing what to think. "You're not the right color. Flamingos are supposed to be pink." With everyone shouting, Fiona began to get scared. She looked at her feathers, and then she looked at theirs. "You don't have to be so loud, and please don't make a scene." That's when Fiona started shaking, and her feathers turned to green. When her friends saw the change, they squawked louder and meaner. Fiona got more anxious, and her feathers grew greener. Her friends looked at the green feathers, not knowing what to think. "Stop being so silly, Fiona. Flamingos are supposed to be pink." "Oh no," said Fiona, "this is worse than just bad." But her friends kept on squawking, and then Fiona got mad. "You're making me angry," she jumped and furiously said. That's when Fiona started yelling, and her feathers turned to red. The flock became silent, hoping things would get better, but Fiona got madder, and her feathers grew redder. Her friends looked at the red feathers, not knowing what to think. "Don't you think you should calm down now? Flamingos are supposed to be pink." They all rushed to hug her, and now Fiona felt bad. Her anger was fading, but now she felt sad. She whimpered and cried, "I'm all mixed up in hue." That's when Fiona started sobbing, and her feathers turned to blue. The flock watched from afar, and their concerns grew truer, but Fiona just got sadder, and her feathers grew bluer. Her friends looked at the blue feathers, not knowing what to think. "Just what kind of bird are you? Flamingos are supposed to be pink." No one can cheer her up, so instead they stayed away. That's when Fiona got lonely, and her feathers turned to gray. A young chick floated up, with a gaze so pure and true. "I hope my feathers change colors when I'm as big as you." Fiona flashed a happy smile, and her feathers erupted in color. It was a surprise to everyone. No feather was like any other. Pink, white, and green, red, blue, and gray. She was every single color now, and that's the way she'd stay. The entire flock gathered around, and Fiona gave a big wink. "I guess we've all learned a lesson here. Flamingos don't have to be pink." The end. Hi, everyone. So, we finished reading our Fiona the Flamingo story. We're going to turn this into our very own art project. What we're going to do is start off by drawing a flamingo. Then we'll talk about some colors and have some fun using some new art materials to add color to our flamingos. But first, we should really take a look at what flamingos look like because they are a very unique bird, to say the least. Notice that it has a very curved neck. His legs even bend backwards. He's got a very large beak. I mean, this flamingo's pink. How many birds do you know that are pink? If I were to start drawing this flamingo, my first step would be to figure out what kind of shapes I see here. So, using a couple simple lines, I can take the idea of this head and that long curved neck and his big body. And I see a line there. I can also take a look at his legs. There's a straight line and an angular line. Do these lines look like anything to you? Over here, looks kind of like a 2. What do the legs look like? Maybe a backwards 4. So, starting off with a line, but my 4 is going the wrong way. And that looks like it might be a pretty good start to drawing our own flamingo. Let's try it.
So, taking what we just talked about with looking at our picture of a real flamingo, we're going to use some of those numbers to help us create a simple drawing. Remember, we have the number 2 and the number 4 down here. When we're drawing, please make sure you're using a pencil. You want to be able to erase. I have mine in marker here so that we can see it nice and clear, but I'm going to set that aside and go ahead and start fresh with you guys. If I go ahead and create a large 2 in the center of the page, that begins the neck and back of my flamingo there. Now I come in and kind of mirror those lines but make them a little bit curvier. I can go ahead and create the rest of my flamingo's body. Finish that off there with a little curve to make his head, and then a big old beak. Remember, flamingos have a big beak. It kind of almost looks a little upside down to me. Then down here, for his legs, we'll start off by giving ourselves a 4. But remember, this 4 is backwards. I'm going to go ahead and draw a big old eye right here. I'll be able to color it in, maybe a little bit of shiny spots on the eye there as well. I might even draw some eyelashes if I'd like. For the legs, I'd like to go back and make them a little bit thicker. So he's got a knee right here. I'm going to draw a circle for that knee, and his other knee is going to be a little bit below where that 4 crosses over. So those little circles are his knees, and I can go back and add a second line to make that leg fat. And same thing with this line, add a second line so that I have something to color in later. I'm going to try to jump behind that 4, erase that little extra line there, and then go ahead and continue it as well. And then I can do just a nice little squiggly line for some water. And then flamingos have webbed feet. So I'll start off with my 3 toes, kind of curve them down, and then just do a little loop to attach them. My flamingo's almost done. I'm going to give him just a little fluffy wing there. I can even add some layers if I like, because I really liked Fiona's nice fluffy wings. And that's all I need to do. Even notice between my 2 drawings, they look a little bit different, and yours might also, and that is just fine. So I'm really excited to show you. This is a brand new supply to all my classes this year. This is Tempera cakes. This is dried tempera paint. Similar to watercolor, you add water to this, but instead this will be opaque. Watercolor is considered transparent. The colors are very light. This is an example of watercolor. You can see a lot of that white through. Tempera paints are opaque though, so we can use these much, much heavier. So let's get started. In your kit, you have different size brushes, as well as this tempera palette. What you will need to get is a cup of water. I only fill my water halfway. Too much water means it spills more easily and it just spills a lot more. So only fill water halfway, And you'll also need a paper towel to help clean and dry your brush. To use these temperas, like I said, we add water to them just like we would watercolor. So let's go ahead and get started. These are brand new. So some of the colors you might not be able to tell what it is immediately. There's a little bit of a haze over them. So my brush, I am swirling it around on the top, but I'm not smashing it down in there. I'm trying to always keep the bristles so they're pretty straight. At most, they bend back and forth like this a little bit, but do not smash your brush, twist it, any of that. That is very wrong to do. Do not do that. So I do get this wet. I do take a little bit of time to swirl, make sure that color mixes with the water. And then I can go over here. I am using my smaller brush. This is my detail brush. So that I can go around to get my details, my smaller areas. Now, just like Fiona the Flamingo, I can stick with one color, or I can try a couple different colors. I want to try some of this blue over here. The more you mix the water and the paint, the more opaque it can become, or that means dark and not see-through. Try a little bit of green here too. Here's some black up here. Making sure my brush is clean. I wipe it off on this paper towel before I switch colors, especially knowing that I just went from that black paint and I want to go to a lighter color. I don't want to mess that up. If I do accidentally get some color in there that I don't want, you can take a paper towel and wipe it off, please. Don't let those colors mix on that palette. I'm going to let that dry a little bit. I don't want to use this color here quite yet. I also gave you a larger brush. This can be used to paint larger areas. And what I wanted to show you real quick too is if I want to make a new color, so I want a little bit of a bluish green, I can go ahead and get some of my paint and bring it to the top here. And since I want bluish green, I can take that blue and add a little bit of green to it, or I can even take that blue. I'm just going to add some yellow to it and make my own green from scratch. we go. If my color got a little bit dirty there, it means I probably need to change my water. So do change your water if it starts to get dirty. If you do mess up the colors, like I said, just take a paper towel and you can wipe it off. And I can use my new color and my larger brush to get these bigger spaces here. I can always come back, a little bit of white. Make sure I have nice heavy color. And I can always put a little dot of white on the eye to give it a little shine mark. I can always come back and add some details. Something like that. Now before this is totally done, I should add something to the background as well. That's a lot of white paper, kind of boring. So take my large brush. Maybe I want to create a light blue sky, so I'll take my blue. I can work with that blue-green I have already. So I'm just going to add that to it. Try to make it a little bit darker, more opaque or less transparent. By trying to get lots of that color and not as much water this time. Clean my brush. And since I wanted more of a sky blue color, get some of this white and mix it in. Clean my brush. Make sure it's not too dirty still. And I want to make a good amount of this so that I don't run out when I go to start painting over here. You should have some newspaper or paper under you. Scrap paper works just fine so that you don't paint your table. If I have detailed spots, I can switch my brushes. I don't have to keep using that big brush. I can switch to my smaller brush. So now the hard part with mixing your own colors is making sure that you have enough. And I've run short here, so I'll have to make a little bit more. Get a little fresh water. Make sure to clean out any extra spaces or any mixed up colors.